The Book of Baruch held its place within the Bible for more than a millennium before Protestant reformers abruptly decided to remove it. What hazardous realities did they believe were hidden in its pages? In this presentation, we're going to reveal the comprehensive account of this disputed text, starting from its enigmatic beginnings during the Babylonian captivity, all the way to its provocative material that questions every assumption you've held about biblical predictions. We're going to examine the political scheming, religious controversies, and concealed teachings that position Baruch among the most captivating and frequently misconstrued writings in sacred history. Now, before we proceed further, if this is your first time here, think about pressing that like button and consider subscribing if you haven't done so yet. When you support us, it allows us to keep creating content like what you're watching right now, helping you discover something fresh or simply enjoy your free time. Additionally, share with us your current location and what hour it happens to be where you are. We're cultivating a worldwide audience right here, which means you can connect with others who share your interests down in the comments area below. So, with no additional delay, shall we get started? The flame dances and flickers against walls of stone, darkened and scarred by burning. Jerusalem sits in complete devastation, its temples now nothing more than ashes and fading memories. Scattered among the wreckage of what was once a magnificent city, an elderly man hunches over his parchment. His hands, marked by years and weather, hold tight to a pen made of reed, tracing slowly across the scroll in the glow of lamplight. This man is Baruch, the one who served as scribe to Jeremiah the prophet. The calendar reads 586 before the Common Era, though dates like these hold little significance for people who mark time according to disasters and tragedies. The forces of Babylon have torn through Judah with the intensity of an all-consuming blaze, leaving behind nothing except desolation and emptiness. Solomon's temple, that awe-inspiring dwelling place of the divine, now exists only as fragmented stones and acrid smoke drifting through the air. Baruch puts words to parchment not for those who hold power or wear priestly garments, but rather for the shattered souls surrounding him. Families cluster together within the remains of what used to be their houses. Young ones weep for bread that simply won't arrive. Women sift through the debris, hoping to discover anything at all that might bring back memories of happier times. Those who survived move through the streets like apparitions, wandering paths that once echoed with the voices of merchants hawking their goods and the sounds of festive celebrations. The aging scribe stops for a moment, his writing instrument suspended above the parchment. What possible words could adequately convey such complete and total devastation? How does anyone find language to address a population that has been stripped of absolutely everything? The scroll lying before him will hold far more than simple ink and pressed reed fibers. It will hold the burden of an entire nation's sorrow, the reverberations of their supplications, and quite possibly their final opportunity to discover meaning within absolute chaos. Past the demolished walls, the pathway extends in the direction of Babylon. Before long, those who survived will travel that dust-covered road as prisoners, abandoning the only territory they have ever called home. The promises their God once made appear just as shattered as the stones lying beneath their footsteps. And yet Baruch keeps writing, his words constructing pathways between hopelessness and the breaking of day. The lamp's flame burns lower now, throwing shadows that dance across the surface of the scroll. Every single letter takes shape slowly, with great deliberation, as though the simple act of putting pen to parchment might somehow push back against the encompassing darkness threatening to consume everything in its path. The elderly man understands that these words will journey far beyond Jerusalem's borders. They'll be spoken aloud in lands he'll never see, pronounced in languages he'll never hear, kept safe by people who never witnessed the temple in all its magnificence. This marks the beginning point of our account. Not with celebration or triumph of any kind, but rather with the quiet bravery of an old scribe who made the choice to write even as the world around him was coming to an end. His book will transform into a connection between the Jerusalem that once existed and the hope that still remains possible. More than simple marks on parchment, it will evolve into a voice speaking for those who have no voice, a prayer offered on behalf of the forgotten, and a witness to faith's power when all other foundations have turned to rubble. The account starts long before Baruch ever picks up his pen to write on parchment. For us to truly comprehend his words, we need to first understand the world that gave them shape, a world where mighty empires rise up and collapse like ocean waves crashing against the coastline, where smaller nations fight desperately to survive while standing in the shadows cast by greater powers. For generations upon generations, the Assyrian Empire had controlled the ancient Near East with an unforgiving grip made of iron. Their military forces moved across the region with the destructive force of swarming locusts, devouring everything that lay in their pathway. Cities that dared to stand against them discovered themselves reduced to piles of broken stone. Populations that challenged their authority simply disappeared entirely from the historical record. The Assyrians had mastered the craft of inspiring terror, wielding fear as their most powerful and effective weapon. But even empires of enormous might carry within themselves the elements of their eventual downfall. Conflict from within gradually weakened Assyria's very foundations. Provinces located in distant territories rose up in rebellion against devastating taxation and governors who ruled with brutality. The empire's enormous size, which had once represented its greatest source of strength, transformed into a burden that couldn't be sustained. Resources became stretched impossibly thin across far too many borders and frontiers. The center simply could not maintain its hold any longer. Into this opening stepped Babylon, a city of great age harboring fresh ambitions. Under the leadership of King Nebuchadnezzar II, the Babylonians evolved from a power with regional influence into a force of imperial magnitude. They possessed something the declining Assyrians no longer had: a unified sense of purpose combined with the appetite characteristic of those on the rise. Where Assyria had ruled using fear alone as its tool, Babylon presented a different vision to the world: prosperity achieved through conquest, glory attained through expansion. The small kingdom of Judah discovered itself caught squarely between these powers in transition. For multiple generations, they had managed to survive by setting one empire against the other, providing tribute to whichever side appeared strongest at any given moment. This precarious balance demanded diplomatic skill of the highest order and frequently required uncomfortable compromises. Kings who made poor choices found their throne rooms occupied by foreign soldiers bearing weapons. King Zedekiah faced a choice that seemed impossible. Babylon insisted on complete and total submission, while Egypt spoke in whispers of promised military assistance. The prophet Jeremiah issued warnings against any act of rebellion, but the advisors to the king spoke passionately of national honor and protection granted by the divine. The argument raged within the palace halls, even as enemy armies assembled beyond the visible horizon. The decision, when it finally came, determined Judah's fate once and for all. Zedekiah selected defiance over submission, placing his trust in Egyptian promises that proved as insubstantial as mist in the morning hours. The rebellion lasted a full 18 months. The siege surrounding Jerusalem extended through multiple seasons of ever-increasing desperation. Food transitioned from scarce to precious to completely non-existent. The city's protective walls, once powerful symbols of strength and security, became nothing more than bars of a prison. When those walls at last gave way and fell, the consequences arrived with horrifying swiftness. The Babylonian military forces demonstrated no mercy whatsoever to those who had dared to defy their king. The treasures housed within the temple were stripped away completely, its vessels of sacred purpose carried off to foreign territories. The royal family met a fate so brutal it defies detailed description. The leaders of the city were bound in chains and taken to face judgment in a court located in distant lands. But the greatest catastrophe of all still lay ahead. The temple itself, that magnificent structure Solomon had constructed to serve as the dwelling place for God's presence, was set ablaze. The fire burned continuously for days, consuming centuries upon centuries of accumulated holiness. When the smoke finally cleared and dispersed, only stones blackened by fire remained of the place where heaven had once made contact with earth. Standing among those who survived was Baruch, now an old man who had witnessed the conclusion of everything he considered sacred. He had worked as scribe in service to Jeremiah, recording the warnings issued by the prophet that so few had paid attention to. Now those warnings had become actual reality. The disaster Jeremiah had foreseen had descended upon Jerusalem with crushing, overwhelming force. Those who survived faced a future filled with uncertainty. Some would be led away toward Babylon as captives in chains. Others would disperse to Egypt, to Moab, or to wherever they might discover refuge and safety. The kingdom of Judah, inheritor of David's promises and Solomon's magnificence, had simply ceased to exist. Only memory remained, and even that threatened to fade away unless someone took action to preserve it. This is the world that gave birth to the scroll written by Baruch. A world where the unthinkable had transformed into reality, where the impossible had already taken place, where the faithful were left to wonder whether God had abandoned them for all eternity. Who exactly was Baruch? Beyond the ruins and the glow of lamplight, behind the carefully formed script and measured words, stands a man whose life serves as a bridge connecting two distinct worlds. Baruch, son of Neriah, emerges from history's shadows as far more than simply a scribe. He becomes a witness to the ending of an entire age. His family name reveals much about the world in which he lived. Neriah translates to lamp of the Lord, which suggests his lineage traced its roots back to faithful servants who worked in the temple. The family maintained a position within Jerusalem's intricate social hierarchy, moving within circles where policy received discussion and decisions were made. They weren't members of royalty, but neither were they common people. They belonged to that essential middle class responsible for keeping kingdoms operational. Baruch's brother, Sariah, held the position of chief quartermaster, serving King Zedekiah, bearing responsibility for the provisions and travel arrangements of the royal household. This family connection placed Baruch within reach of court intrigue and political maneuvering. He would have witnessed firsthand the debates that shaped Judah's final, fateful decisions. The burden of insider knowledge would have pressed down heavily upon his shoulders. The young Baruch selected a different path from his brothers. Rather than pursuing advancement within the royal court, he attached himself to Jeremiah, a prophet whose message grew increasingly unwelcome within the halls of power. This choice required genuine courage, for Jeremiah's warnings about coming judgment earned him numerous enemies. Those who associated themselves with him shared in his unpopularity. Serving as Jeremiah's scribe, Baruch did far more than simply record words. He became the prophet's voice when circumstances made direct communication impossible. Scribes in ancient times were not mere copyists. They were interpreters, editors, and preservers of meaning. They shaped how messages were understood and how they would be remembered. Baruch's role positioned him at the very center of one of history's most important prophetic ministries. The relationship between prophet and scribe developed into something deeper than professional collaboration. Jeremiah trusted Baruch with his most dangerous messages, including the scroll that condemned the policies of King Jehoiakim. When that scroll was burned in the royal brazier, Baruch helped create a second version, adding warnings even stronger than before. Actions such as these carried the risk of imprisonment or worse. Tradition suggests that Baruch possessed gifts beyond skilled penmanship. Some sources hint at prophetic abilities of his own, though he never claimed the title of prophet for himself. His wisdom was practical rather than visionary, focused on preserving truth rather than revealing new mysteries. He understood that someone had to keep the record straight when the world was falling apart around them. The siege of Jerusalem tested every survivor's faith and endurance. Baruch watched the city he loved slowly starve. He saw neighbors turn against neighbors as desperation took hold. He witnessed the collapse of institutions that had seemed permanent. Through it all, he continued his work, documenting events that others would have preferred to forget. When the walls fell and the temple burned, Baruch faced the same choice as every survivor: flee to Egypt with the remnant, submit to Babylonian rule, or join the march into exile. Historical records grow murky here, leaving us to piece together fragments of evidence. Some traditions place him in Babylon with the exiles. Others suggest he remained among Judah's ruins. Still others claim he eventually reached Egypt. The uncertainty matters less than the certainty of his legacy. Wherever Baruch went, he carried with him the accumulated wisdom of a civilization's final chapter. He had seen how pride leads to destruction, how ignoring truth brings catastrophe, how the faithful must sometimes watch helplessly as their world crumbles around them. More than just a keeper of records, Baruch became a bridge between the world that was and the world that would be. His writings preserved not just events, but emotions, not just facts, but feelings. He understood that future generations would need to feel the weight of what had been lost before they could appreciate what might be gained. The old man, writing by lamplight in Jerusalem's ruins, was crafting more than just another scroll. He was creating a voice for the voiceless, a memory for the forgotten, a hope for the hopeless. His words would travel further than his feet ever could, reaching hearts he would never meet, offering comfort to sorrows he would never witness. This is who Baruch was. Not a hero in the traditional sense, but something perhaps more valuable. A faithful witness who refused to let the truth die with the city. The scroll that would become the Book of Baruch did not spring fully formed from the mind of the scribe. Like all great works, it grew through stages, shaped by circumstances, refined by necessity, and driven by the urgent need to make sense of senseless tragedy. The question of when and where Baruch wrote his book has puzzled scholars for generations. Some evidence points to Babylon during the early years of exile, when the trauma was fresh and the community was still learning to survive in foreign territory. Other clues suggest Jerusalem itself, written in the immediate aftermath of destruction, while the ruins still smoldered. The most compelling possibility combines both settings. Baruch likely began writing while still in Jerusalem, capturing the immediate experience of loss and devastation. His first drafts would have been raw, emotional, filled with the urgent need to record what was happening as it happened. These early fragments carried the weight of witnessed truth. Later, whether in Babylon or elsewhere, Baruch would have returned to these early writings. Distance and time would have provided perspective, allowing him to see patterns that were invisible in the moment of crisis. The scattered fragments would have grown into a coherent work, unified by themes of guilt, judgment, and hope. The book's structure suggests this layered composition. The opening confession reads like something written in the heat of grief, while the later sections show the careful craftsmanship of mature reflection. The wisdom hymn, in particular, demonstrates the kind of philosophical depth that comes from wrestling with suffering over time. Baruch's connection to Jeremiah raises fascinating questions about authorship and influence. The book clearly echoes many of Jeremiah's themes while developing them in new directions. Some passages seem to quote or paraphrase the prophet's words, while others extend his ideas into unexplored territory. The boundary between Jeremiah's influence and Baruch's original contribution remains deliberately blurred. The language itself provides clues about the book's origins. Certain phrases and expressions suggest Hebrew composition, while others point to Greek influence. This linguistic mixing was common in the diaspora communities, where Jewish authors wrote for audiences comfortable with multiple languages and cultural references. The book's theological perspective also reflects its complex origins. It combines traditional Jewish concepts of covenant and judgment with newer ideas about wisdom and divine justice. The result is a work that speaks to both those who remembered the old ways and those who were learning to practice their faith in new circumstances. Archaeological evidence, while limited, supports the theory of composition during the early exile period. Fragments of similar texts have been found in Babylon, suggesting that the Jewish community there was actively producing religious literature during this time. The need to maintain identity and faith in a foreign environment would have driven such literary activity. The book's relationship to other exilic literature is equally revealing. It shares themes with Ezekiel's prophecies, the Psalms of Lament, and the wisdom literature that flourished during this period. Yet it maintains its own distinctive voice, suggesting that Baruch was part of a broader literary movement while contributing his own unique perspective. The process of composition would have been communal as well as individual. Baruch would have tested his ideas in conversation with other survivors, refining his message based on their responses. The book's final form reflects not just one man's vision, but the collective wisdom of a community struggling to understand its fate. The preservation of the text required careful planning and considerable resources. Creating multiple copies, training scribes to maintain accuracy, and establishing protocols for transmission were all necessary steps. The book's survival suggests that Baruch and his collaborators succeeded in creating an effective preservation system. The book's eventual translation into Greek opened new possibilities for its influence. The Greek version, known as the Septuagint text, would carry Baruch's words to Jewish communities throughout the Mediterranean world. This translation work required not just linguistic skill, but deep theological understanding to preserve the text's meaning across cultural boundaries. The mystery of the book's origins adds to rather than detracts from its power. Like all great literature, it transcends the circumstances of its creation to speak to universal human experiences. The specific details of when and where matter less than the timeless truths the book contains. What we know for certain is that in the darkest hour of his people's history, an aging scribe chose to write instead of despair. His words became a bridge between past and future, between memory and hope, between the world that was lost and the world that might yet be found. The dusty roads of Mesopotamia stretch endlessly beneath the blazing sun. Along these paths, a stream of humanity moves slowly eastward, the exiles of Judah, carrying their few possessions and their enormous grief. Among them, Baruch clutches a scroll that will soon become their voice in the wilderness of captivity. The scene unfolds beside the rivers of Babylon, where the deportees have been settled in agricultural colonies. The landscape is alien to eyes accustomed to Jerusalem's hills. Here, the horizon is flat and featureless, broken only by irrigation canals and the occasional ziggurat rising like a man-made mountain from the plain. The very air tastes different, heavy with the salt of distant seas and the dust of foreign soil. Baruch rises before the gathered community, his scroll unrolled in his weathered hands. The crowd falls silent. Men and women who have lost everything, children who barely remember their homeland, elders whose eyes still hold the reflection of Jerusalem's flames. They have come together not for celebration, but for something deeper, the ritual of shared remembrance. The opening words pierce the silence like a blade. These are the words of the book that Baruch wrote in Babylon. The simple statement carries enormous weight. Here in this place of exile, words become weapons against forgetting. The scroll transforms from mere parchment into sacred space, a portable homeland for the homeless. As Baruch reads, his voice carries the assembled community back to the day when their world ended. He speaks of the siege, the hunger, the desperate prayers that seemed to go unanswered. But he does not speak as a detached historian. His words pulse with the rhythm of lived experience, the cadence of communal memory. The people listen as if their lives depend on it, because in many ways they do. Without this shared narrative, they are simply refugees in a foreign land. With it, they remain the people of God, temporarily displaced, but not permanently defeated. The scroll becomes their charter of identity, their proof of worth, their warrant for hope. Baruch's voice grows stronger as he continues reading. He speaks of their collective failure, their betrayal of the covenant, their stubborn refusal to heed the warnings of prophets. These are difficult words to hear, but they are necessary words. The community must understand their suffering as more than random misfortune. It must be placed within the framework of divine justice. The confession section resonates through the crowd like a physical force. Heads bow in recognition of truth. Tears flow freely as buried guilt rises to the surface. The public acknowledgement of sin becomes a form of cleansing, a necessary step toward healing. The community's wounds are exposed to the light so that healing might begin. Children who have never seen Jerusalem lean forward to catch every word. These stories are becoming their stories. These losses, their inheritance. Through Baruch's reading, they are being grafted into a narrative that began long before their birth and will continue long after their death. The scroll is making them part of something larger than themselves. The older exiles nod in recognition as familiar phrases echo through the air. They remember the prophets speaking similar words in Jerusalem's streets. They recall the debates in the temple courts, the warnings that went unheeded, the stubborn pride that led to their current suffering. The scroll is confirming what they already knew but were afraid to fully acknowledge. As the reading continues, the mood begins to shift. The opening notes of despair give way to something more complex, a harmony that includes both sorrow and hope. Baruch's voice carries them through the darkness of confession toward the first glimmer of dawn. The scroll is not just diagnosing their illness, but prescribing their cure. The community's response is immediate and visceral. Some rock back and forth in ancient rhythms of mourning. Others lift their hands in gestures of supplication. A few break into spontaneous prayer, their voices weaving together with Baruch's reading in a symphony of longing. The scroll has become a catalyst for corporate worship. The power of the moment lies not just in the words themselves, but in the act of communal hearing. These people are not just receiving information, they are participating in a ritual of transformation. The scroll is remaking them from scattered refugees into a unified people with a shared destiny. As the sun sets over the Babylonian plains, Baruch's voice continues to carry across the gathered community. The scroll has become their evening prayer, their bedtime story, their lullaby of hope. In this foreign land, beside these alien waters, they have found a way to sing the Lord's song after all. The reading concludes, but its effects linger. The scroll has done its work, weaving individual sorrows into collective meaning, transforming private grief into public purpose. The exiles disperse to their dwellings, but they carry with them the echo of Baruch's words and the promise of eventual restoration. The weight of collective guilt hangs over the exile community like a physical presence. In the darkness of their displacement, they must face a truth more painful than their current suffering. They are not innocent victims of imperial ambition, but participants in their own downfall. Baruch's scroll forces them to look into this mirror of self-examination. The confession begins with a stark admission that cuts through every excuse and rationalization. We have sinned before the Lord our God and have not believed, putting our trust in the Lord our God. These words strip away the comfortable fiction that their suffering is undeserved. They acknowledge a fundamental breach of faith that preceded their political collapse. The text does not deal in abstractions, but in concrete failures that every listener can recognize. The people had turned away from God's commandments, pursuing the allure of foreign gods and foreign ways. They had ignored the warnings of prophets, treating divine messengers as nuisances to be silenced rather than voices to be heeded. They had chosen immediate gratification over long-term faithfulness. Baruch's language captures the progressive nature of spiritual decline. The confession does not describe a single moment of catastrophic failure, but a gradual erosion of covenant relationship. Like a marriage that dies by inches, the bond between God and people had been weakened by countless small betrayals until it could no longer bear the weight of crisis. The collective nature of the guilt becomes increasingly clear as the confession unfolds. This is not about individual sins, but about communal failure. Fathers had failed to teach their children the ways of the Lord. Mothers had allowed foreign influences to corrupt their households. Leaders had pursued policies that violated the covenant. Priests had compromised the purity of worship. The entire society had drifted away from its founding principles. The confession acknowledges the justice of their punishment, even as it pleads for mercy. To us belongs shame of face, as at this day, to the men of Judah and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and to our kings, and to our princes, and to our priests, and to our prophets, and to our fathers. The catalogue of shame includes every level of society, from the highest to the lowest. The text's emotional power lies in its refusal to minimize the reality of their situation. The exiles are not encouraged to see themselves as martyrs or to blame their suffering on external forces beyond their control. Instead, they are called to acknowledge their own complicity in the events that led to their displacement. This harsh honesty becomes the foundation for genuine repentance. The confession also reveals the theological sophistication of the exile community. They understand that their covenant with God was not merely a political alliance, but a relationship that demanded total loyalty. Their failure was not simply a matter of poor policy choices, but of fundamental unfaithfulness to their calling as God's chosen people. The language of the confession echoes the great prayers of the Hebrew Bible, particularly the Day of Atonement liturgy and the communal laments found in the Psalms. This connection places the exiles' experience within the broader context of Israel's long history of sin and forgiveness. Their current suffering is not unique, but part of a pattern that began with their ancestors. The confession's structure mirrors the stages of genuine repentance. It begins with acknowledgement of wrongdoing, proceeds to acceptance of responsibility, and culminates in an appeal for divine mercy. The progression is logical and emotional, leading the community through the necessary steps of spiritual renewal. The text's treatment of divine justice deserves special attention. The confession does not question God's right to punish covenant violations, but instead marvels at the divine patience that delayed judgment for so long. The Lord our God is righteous in all his works which he does, for we obeyed not his voice. This affirmation of divine justice becomes the basis for hope in divine mercy. The confession also addresses the problem of inherited guilt. The current generation acknowledges that they are suffering for both their own sins and the sins of their fathers. This multi-generational perspective helps explain why their punishment seems so severe and why their restoration will require more than a simple change of behavior. The emotional climax of the confession comes with the recognition that their punishment has achieved its intended purpose. The exile has broken their stubborn pride and opened their eyes to the reality of their condition. They are no longer the people who ignored prophetic warnings and trusted in political alliances. Suffering has taught them lessons that prosperity never could. The confession concludes with a note of desperate hope. Having acknowledged their guilt and accepted their punishment, the community now looks beyond their current suffering to the possibility of restoration. The very act of confession becomes a form of prayer, a reaching out toward a God who has the power to transform even the most hopeless situation. In the gathering darkness beside Babylon's rivers, the exiles' voices join together in this ancient rhythm of confession and hope. Their words carry the weight of national tragedy, but also the seeds of national renewal. They have learned to speak truth about themselves, and in that truth-telling, they have found the first steps toward healing. From the depths of their despair, the exiles lift their voices in a prayer that bridges the gap between human suffering and divine mercy. Their words rise like incense from the foreign soil of Babylon, carrying the weight of a people who have learned to call upon God from the far country of their exile. The prayer begins with an acknowledgement of God's enduring power despite their current circumstances. And now, O Lord God of Israel, that have brought your people out of the land of Egypt with a mighty hand, and with signs and with wonders, and with great power, and with a stretched out arm, and have gotten yourself a name, as at this day. The exiles anchor their plea in the foundation of divine faithfulness established long before their current crisis. This appeal to history serves multiple purposes. It reminds God of past covenant relationships, while also reminding the exiles of divine power that transcends present circumstances. The God who delivered their ancestors from Egyptian bondage possesses the same power to deliver them from Babylonian captivity. The prayer becomes an act of faith disguised as an act of remembrance. The progression of the prayer reveals deep theological understanding. The exiles do not simply ask for relief from their suffering, but for restoration of their relationship with God. They recognize that their physical exile is a symptom of their spiritual alienation. True deliverance must address both the external circumstances and the internal condition that produced them. The prayer's language grows increasingly intimate as it proceeds. What begins as formal address to the distant God of their fathers becomes personal conversation with the covenant Lord who knows their names. But deal with us after your loving kindness, and according to the multitude of your mercies. The exiles are not relying on their own worthiness, but on God's character as one who shows steadfast love even to the unfaithful. The petition for deliverance includes specific requests that reveal the exiles' understanding of their needs. They ask not just for physical return to their homeland, but for spiritual renewal that will prevent future failures. They seek not just relief from suffering, but transformation of character that will make them worthy of the blessings they request. The prayer acknowledges the evangelistic dimension of their situation. Their restoration will serve as testimony to the nations about the power and faithfulness of Israel's God. Then shall all the inhabitants of the earth know that you are the Lord our God, because Israel and his posterity are called by your name. The exiles understand that their suffering has cosmic significance, affecting not just their own destiny, but the reputation of God among the nations. The emotional intensity of the prayer increases as it develops. The measured cadences of the opening give way to more urgent rhythms as the exiles pour out their hearts before God. Their words carry the full weight of their longing for home, their grief over lost opportunities, their fear that their punishment might be permanent. The prayer's structure mirrors the covenant relationship itself. It begins with recognition of God's sovereignty, proceeds through confession of human failure, and culminates in an appeal to divine mercy. This progression reflects the theological understanding that proper relationship with God requires both human humility and divine grace. The text's treatment of time reveals the exiles' complex relationship with their past and future. They simultaneously mourn what has been lost and hope for what might be restored. The prayer becomes a bridge between these two temporal realms, allowing the exiles to process their grief while nurturing their hope. The communal nature of the prayer deserves special emphasis. This is not individual petition, but corporate intercession. The exiles pray not just for themselves, but for their entire people, including those who remained in Judah and those who fled to other lands. The prayer creates solidarity among the scattered communities of the diaspora. The prayer's theological sophistication appears in its treatment of divine justice and mercy. The exiles do not ask God to ignore their sins or to act as if their punishment were unjust. Instead, they appeal to the divine capacity to show mercy even to those who deserve judgment. They seek grace not because they have earned it, but because God is gracious. The conclusion of the prayer combines resignation with hope in a way that reflects mature faith. The exiles acknowledge that their future depends entirely on God's will, while simultaneously expressing confidence that God's will ultimately tends toward restoration rather than destruction. They have learned to trust divine wisdom even when they cannot understand divine timing. The prayer's final words echo across the centuries as a model of faith under pressure. For you, O Lord, sit upon your throne forever, and your memorial unto all generations. The exiles affirm God's eternal sovereignty even from their position of temporary powerlessness. Their prayer becomes an act of worship that transcends their circumstances. In the gathering dusk beside Babylon's waters, the exiles' voices unite in this ancient rhythm of petition and praise. Their prayer carries their deepest longings toward heaven while anchoring their souls in the unshakable foundation of divine faithfulness. They have learned to hope against hope, to trust beyond reason, to pray with the persistence of those who have nothing left to lose. In the midst of their lament and longing, the exiles pause to consider a question that has haunted human hearts since the beginning of time. Where can wisdom be found? Baruch's scroll turns from the immediate concerns of exile to the eternal quest for understanding, offering a meditation that transcends their particular circumstances to address the universal human search for meaning. The hymn begins with a series of rhetorical questions that frame the entire discussion. Who has gone up into heaven and taken her, and brought her down from the clouds? Who has gone over the sea and found her, and will bring her for pure gold? The questions establish the scope of the search. Wisdom is not hidden in some remote corner of the earth, but transcends all earthly boundaries. The text systematically eliminates the places where wisdom might be expected to reside. The mighty rulers of the earth, despite their power and resources, do not possess it. The wealthy merchants, despite their far-reaching trade networks, have not discovered it in their travels. The scholars and philosophers, despite their learning and cleverness, have not captured it in their systems of thought. The hymn's poetic structure reinforces its theological message. Each stanza builds on the previous one, creating a mounting sense of the impossibility of finding wisdom through human effort. The cumulative effect is to drive the listener toward the inevitable conclusion that wisdom must come from beyond the human realm. The description of Earth's rulers carries particular poignancy for the exiles. They have witnessed the fall of mighty kingdoms and the humiliation of proud kings. The Babylonian Empire, despite its current dominance, will eventually follow the same path as Assyria, and all the other powers that have risen and fallen throughout history. Earthly wisdom proves temporary and fragile. The merchants mentioned in the hymn represent the cosmopolitan culture of the ancient world. These traders traveled the known world, connecting distant civilizations and accumulating vast knowledge about different peoples and customs. Yet for all their experience and sophistication, they have not discovered the secret of true wisdom. The hymn's treatment of the powerful and wealthy reflects the exiles' own experience of the limitations of human resources. They have seen how quickly circumstances can change, how swiftly the mighty can fall, how suddenly wealth can disappear. Their own displacement has taught them that security cannot be found in any human institution or achievement. The search for wisdom becomes increasingly desperate as the hymn progresses. The text surveys the entire created order, from the highest heaven to the deepest sea, from the most remote wilderness to the most civilized city. Yet everywhere the search comes up empty. Wisdom remains elusive, tantalizingly close yet impossibly distant. The emotional tone of the hymn shifts as it approaches its climax. The initial confidence of the search gives way to a growing sense of frustration and despair. The very comprehensiveness of the search serves to emphasize its futility. Human beings, despite their intelligence and determination, cannot grasp the wisdom they desperately need. The hymn's turning point comes with the recognition that wisdom belongs to God alone, but He knows the way thereof, and He knows the place thereof. The transition from human searching to divine knowledge is marked by a shift in the text's rhythm and tone. The frantic quest gives way to calm affirmation of divine sovereignty. The description of God's relationship to wisdom reveals the text's theological sophistication. Wisdom is not something God possesses, but something God is. The divine knowledge encompasses all of creation, from the stars and their courses to the secrets of human hearts. This omniscience is not abstract, but personal, not distant, but intimately involved in the affairs of the world. The hymn's climax comes with the identification of wisdom with God's law. This is the book of the commandments of God, and the law that endures forever. The abstract philosophical quest suddenly becomes concrete and practical. Wisdom is not hidden in some remote realm, but has been revealed in the covenant relationship between God and Israel. The exiles' situation gives special poignancy to this identification. They have been separated from the temple and the regular observance of the law. Yet the law itself remains with them. Their exile from the land need not mean exile from wisdom. They can find what they seek in the traditions they carry with them. The hymn's conclusion offers both comfort and challenge to the exile community. Comfort comes from the assurance that wisdom is available to those who seek it in the right place. Challenge comes from the recognition that finding wisdom requires submission to divine authority rather than reliance on human cleverness. The final verses of the hymn extend the invitation to all who will receive it. All they that hold it fast are appointed to life. Wisdom is not the exclusive possession of an elite few, but is available to all who approach it with proper humility and reverence. The exiles, despite their current circumstances, have access to the same wisdom that has guided their ancestors throughout history. In the fading light of the Babylonian evening, the exiles ponder these words about wisdom's hiding place. They have learned through suffering what prosperity never taught them. That true understanding comes not from human achievement, but from divine revelation. Their exile has become a school of wisdom, their displacement a classroom of divine instruction. The darkness of exile begins to lift as Baruch's scroll turns toward the light of promise. After the long night of confession and lamentation, the first rays of dawn break across the horizon of hope. The voice that has spoken of judgment now speaks of restoration. The words that have diagnosed disease now prescribe healing. The call to hope begins with a direct address to Jerusalem, personified as a grieving mother who has lost her children. Take off the garment of your mourning and affliction, O Jerusalem, and put on the comeliness of the glory that comes from God forever. The image is deeply moving. A woman who has worn black for her dead children is invited to exchange her funeral clothes for wedding garments. The metaphor carries profound theological significance. Jerusalem's suffering is not permanent, but temporary, not a final verdict, but a passing judgment. The city that has been stripped of its glory will be reclothed with divine splendor. The transformation will be complete, affecting not just external circumstances, but the very nature of the city's identity. The scope of the restoration extends beyond Jerusalem to encompass the entire scattered people. For God will show your splendor everywhere under heaven. The promise is not limited to those who remained in the land, but includes all the exiles, wherever they may be. The diaspora will be gathered, the scattered will be brought home, the separated will be reunited. The call to hope transforms the exiles' understanding of their current situation. What appears to be abandonment is revealed as preparation. What seems like punishment is shown to be purification. What feels like the end is demonstrated to be a new beginning. The exile, painful as it is, serves a larger purpose in God's plan for restoration. The text's imagery grows increasingly triumphant as it develops. Mountains will be made low to ease the journey home. Valleys will be filled to create smooth paths. The very landscape will be transformed to accommodate the returning exiles. Nature itself will cooperate in the great work of restoration. The description of the return journey carries echoes of the original Exodus from Egypt. Just as God led their ancestors through the wilderness with pillars of cloud and fire, so God will guide the exiles home with divine protection and provision. The second Exodus will surpass the first in glory and magnificence. The call to hope addresses not just the physical aspects of restoration, but the emotional and spiritual dimensions as well. The exiles will return not as defeated refugees, but as triumphant pilgrims. They will come with singing and celebration, their mourning turned to dancing, their sorrow transformed into joy. The promise extends to future generations as well as the present one. The children born in exile will see the land of their fathers. The young people who have known only foreign soil will walk on sacred ground. The restoration will bridge the gap between past and future, connecting the exiles with their heritage and their destiny. The theological foundation of hope rests on the character of God rather than the worthiness of the people. The restoration will come not because the exiles have earned it, but because God is faithful to divine promises. The covenant endures, even when human faithfulness fails. The call to hope challenges the exiles to prepare themselves for the coming transformation. They must ready their hearts for joy, their feet for the journey, their hands for the work of rebuilding. The passive suffering of exile must give way to the active preparation for return. The text's treatment of time reveals the complexity of hope in the midst of suffering. The restoration is both immediate and distant, already begun and yet to come. The exiles must learn to live in the tension between promise and fulfillment, between vision and reality. The call to hope concludes with a vision of Jerusalem restored to surpassing glory. The city will be rebuilt with precious stones, its walls constructed of jewels, its gates fashioned from gold. The hyperbolic language conveys the impossibility of describing the restoration in ordinary terms. In the growing darkness beside Babylon's streams, the exiles hear these words of hope and feel their hearts lift within them. The scroll has carried them through the valley of despair to the mountain of vision. They are no longer simply refugees waiting for death, but pilgrims preparing for home. The great city of Babylon stretches along the Euphrates River like a testament to human ambition and divine favor. Its massive walls rise from the Mesopotamian plain, enclosing a world of wonders that dazzle visitors from across the known world. For the Jewish exiles, this magnificent metropolis becomes both prison and school, challenge and opportunity. The city's most striking feature dominates the skyline, the Tower of Babel, reconstructed as the Great Ziggurat of Marduk. Its stepped levels climb toward heaven, each platform decorated with glazed bricks in brilliant blues and yellows. To the exiles, this monument represents everything they have been taught to reject: the human desire to reach divinity through architectural achievement. The Hanging Gardens, one of the world's 7 wonders, cascade down terrace levels in defiance of the desert climate. King Nebuchadnezzar built them for his homesick wife, a gesture that the exiles understand with painful intimacy. They too long for the familiar landscapes of their homeland, the hills of Judah, the olive groves of their fathers. The Ishtar Gate opens onto the city's sacred processional way, its walls decorated with images of dragons and bulls in vibrant relief. During religious festivals, these streets fill with crowds celebrating gods whose names the exiles are forbidden to speak. They watch from the sidelines, observers of a religious world they cannot join. The palace complex sprawls across hundreds of acres, housing the vast bureaucracy that administers the empire. Here, Jewish exiles find employment as scribes, accountants, and advisors. Their learning and ability to read and write give them special value to the Babylonian officials, who require trained workers to help run their vast territories spread across distant lands. The network of waterways, bringing vitality to this arid civilization, both captivates and disturbs these displaced people in equal portions. The construction demonstrates human brilliance at its absolute peak. At the same time, it stands for Babylonian control over the natural world, which appears to question the supreme power of the divine. These exiles find themselves needing to exist within this framework while keeping their spiritual autonomy separate from it. The Jewish communities gather in farming regions beyond the central city, settlements bearing names like Tel Aviv and Tela that reflect their uprooted condition. These aren't walled-off quarters, but carefully organized colonies created to boost production while keeping social unity intact. The Babylonians grasp that satisfied exiles produce more than bitter ones. Everyday existence in these settlements moves to patterns both recognizable and unfamiliar. The exiles rise to foreign bird songs and foreign speech. They cultivate ground that has never experienced the blessing of covenant connection. They bring up youngsters who speak Aramaic just as naturally as Hebrew, who understand Babylonian ways equally well as Jewish heritage. The mental burden of displacement touches every corner of community existence. Grown people battle sadness and worry as they adapt to their changed situation. Young ones develop confused identities as they move between their parents' recollections and their own lived moments. Older folks frequently withdraw into memories of better days, incapable of accepting the truth of their forced relocation. The task of preserving Jewish character in an alien setting demands unending watchfulness and fresh thinking. Religious practice needs to be modified for different situations. The temple no longer stands as a focal point for worship activities. Priests need to discover different purposes in a society without animal sacrifice. Prophets must make sense of divine purpose in strange surroundings. The Babylonian justice framework brings both safety and restriction to the exile settlements. The empire's acceptance of varied religious activities permits the Jews to keep their unique traditions. Yet, final power belongs to Babylonian authorities who might not grasp or care about Jewish worries. Financial possibilities abound in this wealthy empire. The exiles' talents in management, commerce, and skilled trades create pathways to success and riches. Some grab these chances with enthusiasm, while others fear the spiritual price of excessive prosperity in a land not their own. The empire's worldly nature brings the exiles into contact with concepts and customs from throughout the known territories. Persian spiritual ideas, Greek reasoning traditions, and Egyptian knowledge writings all make their way into Babylonian scholarly circles. The exiles need to judge which of these outside forces can be carefully integrated and which need to be kept out. The growth of synagogue worship in this era answers the missing temple. These neighborhood meeting spots become hubs not only for prayer but for teaching, legal matters, and community choices. The structure that develops will survive longer than the empire that made its creation necessary. Keeping sacred writings safe becomes a vital goal for the exile settlements. Copyists labor without rest to duplicate and protect the documents that tie them to their history. The spoken traditions that add to written texts are thoughtfully preserved and passed to the coming generation. The possibility of going back troubles every exile household. Should they get ready for lasting settlement in Babylon or keep their attention on future return to Judah? Various families choose various paths, producing friction within the community between those who adjust and those who fight adjustment. The appearance of apocalyptic writing in this era shows the community's hunger to make sense of their pain within a universal structure. Compositions like Daniel and Ezekiel present visions of divine action that will prove the faithful right and bring the covenant people back to their rightful position in history. The growth of Jewish legal thinking during the exile addresses hands-on questions arising in scattered life. How should ritual cleanliness be kept without the temple? What makes proper Sabbath keeping in a foreign territory? How should marriage and family connections be arranged in a Gentile setting? As time moves forward, a generation grows up that knows Babylon as their birthplace. These young individuals speak the tongue easily, grasp the culture instinctively, and build connections across ethnic lines. Their connection to the exile reality differs completely from that of their parents and those who came before. In the open spaces of their modest dwellings, next to the channels that bring water to their plots, the exiles build a fresh version of Jewish existence that will shape their children's children for ages ahead. They discovered how to sing the Lord's melody in an unfamiliar territory, learning that faith can endure transplanting and actually grow strong in foreign ground. Historical setting: Babylon and diaspora. The early sun climbs over the Euphrates, throwing extended shadows across the Jewish section of Tel Aviv. Smoke rises from breakfast fires as families start another day in their peculiar new country. Children's happy sounds ring through tight streets, but beneath the regular noises of daily existence runs a current of yearning that never completely fades. The settlement looks nothing like the Jerusalem these individuals recall. Rather than stone structures ascending terraced slopes, matching mud brick homes extend across the level river plain. The building design speaks of usefulness instead of attractiveness, purpose instead of heritage. Still, the exiles have figured out how to name this location home, even while their spirits stay connected to faraway hills. The community's social organization has shifted to fit their new situation while keeping crucial parts of their character. Leaders who formerly counseled royalty now settle arguments between those living nearby. Priests who presented offerings in the temple now instruct children in the accounts that shaped their people. Traders who conducted business in Jerusalem's bazaars now work through the intricate trading systems of the Babylonian Empire. The difficulty of keeping religious practice without the temple has triggered notable creativity. Families come together for prayers at daybreak and dusk, their sounds combining in old songs that float across the settlement. The Sabbath gets honored with thoughtful focus on particulars, building pockets of holy time in the flow of regular days. Learning grows more crucial as the community understands they might stay in exile longer than first anticipated. Schools develop where children study Hebrew next to Aramaic, where customary accounts are presented alongside useful abilities needed for achievement in Babylonian life. The program shows the strain between keeping traditions and adjusting that marks exile existence. The waterway network that brings water to their crops also functions as a meeting spot for community activity. Women clean garments while exchanging reports and talk. Men talk about growing methods and business chances. Children participate in activities that mix Jewish customs with regional practices, building mixed versions of culture that their elders would recognize as both known and strange. Marriage plans become complicated by the narrow selection of appropriate matches within the exile group. Some families enforce firm rules about marrying only within their group, demanding that their offspring wed solely within the community. Others allow unions with understanding outsiders who consent to take on Jewish ways. These choices produce lasting splits within families and areas. The wealth that certain exiles gain in Babylonian culture brings its own troubles. Achievement in commerce or public position demands agreements that disturb traditional religious feelings. Rich families encounter blame from their struggling acquaintances, who wonder if such achievement arrives at too steep a spiritual expense. The creation of written rules during this time responds to the missing, temple-centered religious control. Scribes gather and organize customary actions, building movable versions of religious character that can survive location changes. These documents become valuables, worth more than precious metals. The matter of youngsters born in exile produces special unease within the community. These youth have never witnessed Jerusalem, never honored in the temple, never known the patterns of existence in the promised territory. How can they genuinely be viewed as members of the covenant family? How can their parents hand down a character rooted in memories these youngsters have never possessed? The aging of the first exile group brings urgency about keeping memories alive. The individuals who saw Jerusalem's fall grow smaller in number each season. Their direct reports of the homeland grow more valuable to a community that worries about losing real ties to their history. Mixed marriages with the surrounding people speed up as time passes despite community attempts to stop it. Youth who labor next to Babylonian co-workers form romantic bonds that cross ethnic and religious divisions. The resulting marriages create offspring whose character becomes even more tangled and argued over. The rise of various religious groups within the exile community shows different reactions to their circumstances. Some circles keep strict following of customary practices, declining any compromise to their foreign surroundings. Others take a more flexible path, looking for methods to stay faithful while dealing positively with Babylonian culture. The importance of dreams and visions grows as the community looks for divine direction in their uncertain situation. People who say they get prophetic messages draw supporters among those desperate for comfort about what lies ahead. Not every such assertion proves genuine, bringing divisions between those who believe and those who doubt. The yearly rhythm of Babylonian farming varies from the sequences the exiles understood in Judah, requiring changes in religious observation connected to growing seasons. Celebrations that formerly marked Palestinian crop gathering need to be adjusted to Mesopotamian circumstances. The modifications feel like additional wearing away of their genuine character. Business links with other Jewish groups scattered across the empire offer emotional and practical help. Messages and couriers bring updates between settlements, building networks of shared aid that go beyond location boundaries. These ties help keep the feeling of being part of a bigger people despite their separated state. The slow acceptance of Aramaic as the community's main tongue brings age group tensions. Older exiles demand Hebrew for religious uses while accepting Aramaic for regular talking. Younger individuals grow more at ease with Aramaic, occasionally finding it hard to comprehend Hebrew prayers and passages. The creation of fresh versions of religious melodies shows the mixing of cultures that marks exile existence. Customary tunes gain Babylonian instruments. Regional beats are fitted to biblical words. The resulting pieces sound foreign to those who favor tradition, but feel right to those born in exile. As darkness arrives over the settlement, families gather for the evening food and the day's closing prayers. The descending sun points them toward the path to Jerusalem, still hundreds of miles distant across wasteland and peaks. They finish another day as displaced people, but they stay a people held together by memory, expectation, and the belief that their account hasn't reached its end. Literary style and theology. Imagine a work of art created with language. The Book of Baruch moves like old melodies, each line adding to the one before. Its writer grasped something deep about how people work. Individuals recall accounts presented in beat. They grip words that ring in their spirits. The book starts with admission, unpolished, truthful, direct. We have committed wrong before the Lord our God. These statements don't avoid the reality. They hit right at the heart of human living. The beat holds significance, brief expressions, clear declarations. Each one strikes like a soft mallet on the inner being. Then arrives the transformation. The words change. Where admission was pointed and harsh, the wisdom song becomes running liquid. She is the book of the commandments of God, the law that continues forever. The phrases expand longer. They surround the reader like a cozy covering. This is not chance. This is skilled work. Baruch's writer understood the strength of difference. Hurt, accompanied by relief. Shadows, accompanied by brightness. The theological teaching comes not through debate, but through living it. The reader senses the burden of wrongdoing, then finds the freedom of expectation. This emotional path builds permanent effect. The book takes freely from older writings. Deuteronomy rings in its admissions. Isaiah's comforting songs appear again in its assurances, but this isn't simple duplication. It's like a performer using known tunes and braiding them into something fresh. The writer grasped that individuals discover comfort in known sounds expressed in new methods. See how the theology develops. God shows up not as removed critic, but as patient instructor. Certainly, punishment arrives. But it has a reason. It brings understanding. The exile turns into a learning space. Pain turns into lessons. This theological structure changes disaster into purposeful happening. The prayer portions show thoughtful building. They match old sequences: opening, request, reason, ending. Still within this framework, real feeling moves. The writer knew that shape holds up emotion instead of limiting it. Like a waterway requires edges to move powerfully, prayers require arrangement to hold strength. The wisdom song stands as the book's theological heart. Here, unclear ideas turn into solid pictures. Wisdom isn't simple information, it's the base of making. It's the hidden truth behind the stars above. It's the explanation the ground doesn't fall apart. This poetic handling makes difficult theology reachable to basic hearts. The book's understanding of past events shows advanced reasoning. Happenings don't occur without pattern. They move in sequences. Wrong brings results. Results bring knowing. Knowing brings turning back. Turning back brings making whole. This round view brings expectation even in the blackest times. Words themselves turn into theological declaration. Hebrew terms hold meaning past their simple definitions. When Baruch discusses God's loyal affection, the first term hints at devotion that never snaps. When it refers to covenant, It means connection that continues past breakdown. These word selections mold the reader's grasp of divine nature. The book's arrangement reflects its teaching. It starts in hopelessness and finishes in expectation. It begins with broken-apart individuals and wraps up with brought-together community. It starts with judgment and ends with compassion. This written design strengthens the theological idea. God's account with people moves in this identical sequence. The writer grasped that theology functions best when it reaches regular living. The book doesn't talk about unclear ideas separately. It ties divine reality to human living. Exile turns into spiritual picture. Coming back turns into theological assurance. The reader notices their personal account shown in Israel's path. The emotional sound changes with careful exactness. Sadness transforms into admission. Admission pours into asking. Asking becomes celebration. Each part builds the right emotional base for what follows. The writer understood that spirits need preparation before thinking can grasp. The book's theology comes through account instead of declaration. We discover God's nature by watching divine movements. We grasp human character by seeing human selections. We take hold of spiritual reality through solid illustrations. This account method makes tangled thoughts simple without making them surface level. The closing parts mix assurance with caution. Expectation arrives with requirements. Being made whole needs reaction. The theology stays practical about human character, while keeping hopefulness about divine favor. This steadiness builds a teaching that gives comfort without fooling, pushes without breaking. The writing approach helps the theological aim. Every method holds up the main teaching. God stays faithful even when individuals stumble. This reality comes not through debate, but through living it. The reader doesn't only discover this reality, they sense it, they experience it, they bring it ahead into their personal account. The letter of Jeremiah, Baruch 6. The letter of Jeremiah stands separate, like a single speaker in a busy market. While sellers promote their products and residents honor their deities, one individual has courage to voice reality. This letter, connected to Baruch's writing, holds the force of resistance, covered in the mild sound of an instructor. Imagine Babylon at its peak. Golden statues border the roads. Marble houses of worship climb toward the sky. Sweet smoke rises continually. The atmosphere itself appears heavy with divine existence. Every turn contains a sacred spot. Every residence shows its home deities. The city lives and breathes worship. Into this setting arrives a plain letter. Its teaching slices through the splendor like a keen edge through fine cloth. These deities are untrue. The statements appear almost too basic for such an intricate setting. Still, their plainness becomes their force. The letter's writer grasped something about idol worship that current readers frequently overlook. It's not centered on the figures themselves. It's centered on the human spirit that requires something to honor. The golden young bulls and silver pictures simply show deeper wants. Individuals build deities, matching their image, because they worry about the mysterious God who built them. The letter starts with gentle ridicule, so mild it nearly appears caring. They dress them with gold and silver, but they are untrue and cannot talk. Picture a parent showing a child why their plaything isn't actually living. The sound holds patience mixed with sorrow. These individuals have confused shadows with substance. But see how the questioning grows. The letter doesn't only attack, it shows, it uncovers, it demonstrates how these deities fall short at the most basic point. They can't guard themselves from decay and breakdown. They can't shift when their houses of worship burn. They can't talk when their followers call out in requirement. The letter arrangement moves in a thoughtful sequence. Each part adds to the one before. First arrives the basic absurdity. Deities requiring human attention can't offer divine assistance. Then arrives the greater questioning. These deities show human worries instead of divine reality. Last arrives the uplifting teaching. The actual God requires no figures because divine existence occupies all area. The writer understood the force of particular illustrations. Temple women of the night gain from worship. Priests take offerings meant for deities. Craftspeople sell religious creations like any other goods. These solid particulars make unclear debates actual. The reader notices through the religious front to the human truth underneath. The letter's handling of worry shows advanced understanding of the mind. Individuals honor idols, not from affection but from dread. They worry what could occur if they don't calm the deities. They worry their acquaintances' opinion if they don't follow along. They worry the mysterious results of standing separate. The letter faces these worries straight on. But the letter brings more than questioning. It offers different seeing. Rather than many deities fighting for notice, picture one God requiring no fighting. Rather than divine powers demanding constant help, imagine divine affection that helps others. Rather than deities threatening harm, think about God who assures safety. The letter's understanding of past times questions usual thinking. Most individuals notice Babylon's achievement as sign of divine blessing. The letter hints at the reverse. Achievement built on untrue bases finally falls apart. The powerful empire appearing lasting today will turn into tomorrow's broken places. This view brings expectation to powerless exiles. The part on divine fairness holds special importance. The letter doesn't promise quick harm. Rather, it indicates longer sequences. Communities trusting in untrue deities finally meet truth. Their false beliefs can't guard them from results. Their deities can't rescue them from their own selves. The letter's handling of ceremony shows deep grasp. It doesn't condemn every ritual. It separates between hollow ritual and purposeful worship. The trouble isn't the shape, but the spirit underneath. Real worship changes the one who worships. Untrue worship keeps them the same. The emotional sound changes as the letter moves forward. First, ridicule transforms into sorrow. Sorrow becomes urgency. Urgency turns into welcome. The writer desires readers to break free from their false beliefs, not to shame them, but to set them loose. The letter's ending brings hands-on direction. How should individuals react to cultural force? How can they keep faith in unfriendly settings? How do they separate between social matching and real worship? These matters stay relevant across ages. The letter's position at the finish of Baruch builds strong ending. Following admission, asking, and assurance, arrives this last test. The reader needs to select between the easy, false beliefs of the ruling culture and the hard reality of real faith. The letter makes this selection unavoidable. The historical background brings depth to the teaching. Displaced Jews encountered huge force to blend in. Babylon's God appeared stronger than the God who permitted Jerusalem's breaking. The letter faces these uncertainties straight on. It brings theological structure for grasping seeming loss. The letter's effect reaches well past its first setting. Early followers of Christ employed its debates against pagan worship. Middle Ages religious scholars repeated its understandings about idol worship. Current readers discover its questioning of untrue deities, surprisingly relevant. The letter's teaching goes beyond its time because it faces universal human directions. The writing method builds permanent effect. The letter doesn't only debate against idol worship. It assists readers notice through their personal false beliefs. It offers instruments for spotting untrue worship in every shape. It brings expectation that reality finally wins over lies. Reception history. The Book of Baruch started its path through time like a seed moved by wind. Occasionally, it discovered rich ground. Occasionally, it landed on hard earth. Its welcome relates an account of human groups struggling with matters that never completely vanish. In the first ages, Jewish groups accepted Baruch as genuine voice from their history. Synagogues presented portions during times of sadness. Scholars duplicated and kept its writing. The book brought comfort to individuals existing in spreading. It talked their words of wanting and expectation. But something changed in the ages following. As Jewish groups built their canon, Baruch discovered itself on the edges. The book held wisdom and attractiveness. But matters came up about its sources. Did Baruch himself compose these statements? The uncertainty built distance. Distance built uncertainty. Uncertainty brought keeping out. The early followers of Christ found Baruch with new seeing. Here existed a book that appeared to indicate toward their personal account. The subjects of displacement and coming back, judging and compassion, rang with Christian theology. The book discovered fresh existence in various ground. Jerome, the accomplished translator, put Baruch in his Latin Vulgate. This choice molded Western Christianity for more than 1,000 seasons. Monks duplicated the writing. Bishops repeated its portions. The book turned woven into the cloth of Christian worship and reasoning. The Council of Trent indicated a vital time. When Protestant reformers questioned which books fit in Scripture, the Catholic Church reacted with definite choices. Baruch got official acceptance as Deuterocanonical. The book discovered protected position in Catholic Bibles. But the Protestant world shifted in various paths. Luther and Calvin brought up matters about Baruch's power. They noticed worth in its instructions, but questioned its divine breathing in. Protestant Bibles moved the book to the apocrypha, or kept it out completely. The group of faith had separated over this old writing. Eastern Orthodox churches kept their personal connection with Baruch. The book showed in their ceremonies and theological talks. It occupied respected position without building the arguments that indicated Western discussions. The Eastern custom appeared more at ease with books that existed in the areas between definite groups. Middle Ages Christianity discovered special meaning in Baruch's subjects. The book's handling of displacement rang with groups that frequently sensed moved. Its summons to turning back matched with Christian focus on admission. Its assurance of being made whole brought expectation to individuals existing in hard times. The Renaissance carried fresh methods to old writings. Humanist scholars looked at Baruch with new studying instruments. They examined its words, matched manuscripts, looked into its historical assertions. This scholarly focus carried both valuing and doubt. The Reformation discussions showed greater matters about religious power. Who chooses which books hold divine power? How do groups figure out real revelation? Baruch turned into a study example in these bigger matters. The book's welcome showed wider theological separations. The Counter-Reformation noticed Catholic scholars protecting Baruch with fresh strength. They created explanations, protected its canonical position, and showed its theological worth. The book turned into a picture of Catholic dedication to wider biblical canon. Protestant learning took various methods. Some scholars examined Baruch as historical record without accepting its divine power. Others discovered spiritual worth while keeping theological doubts. The book filled intricate area in Protestant reasoning. The current era carried fresh instruments for grasping old writings. Scholars could study Baruch's words more exactly. They could follow its historical growth. They could match it with other old writing. This study deepened valuing for the book's written and theological gains. The unity movement of the 20th age built fresh chances for talking. Scholars from various customs started working together on biblical studies. Baruch gained from this working together. The book discovered readers across church lines. Vatican II pushed Catholic involvement with biblical learning. This created fresh paths for grasping Baruch's position in Christian custom. The book got new focus from Catholic scholars who carried current methods to old writing. Protestant biblical learning slowly built more detailed methods to Deuterocanonical books. While keeping their canonical choices, Protestant scholars started valuing these writings as important sources for grasping Old Judaism and early Christianity. Jewish learning lived through its personal rebirth in the current era. Scholars started looking again at writings that had been pushed aside in older ages. Baruch discovered fresh valuing among Jewish readers who noticed its worth for grasping their ancestors' livings. The Holocaust built fresh settings for understanding Baruch. The book's subjects of displacement and suffering rang with Jewish groups that had lived through unmatched pain. Its teaching of final being made whole brought expectation to survivors rebuilding their existences. Current learning comes to Baruch with advanced methods. Scholars examine its building, study its theology, and follow its effect. The book gets serious focus from scholars. no matter their stands on its canonical condition. The digital time has made access to old writings available to all. Readers throughout the globe can now examine Baruch, no matter their religious background. Online sources make scholarly talks available to wider groups. The book's effect keeps expanding. Current liturgical movements have found again Baruch's worship strength. Some churches put its prayers into current gatherings. Its subjects of admission and expectation talk to current spiritual requirements. The book discovers fresh existence in surprising spots. The book's welcome history shows how groups make sense of their history. Each age discovers various meanings in the identical old statements. Each custom focuses on various parts of the book's teaching. This variety shows the richness of human reaction to holy writing, legacy in art, liturgy, and thought. The Book of Baruch made marks across the ground of human building. Like liquid moving through various paths, its effect took many shapes. Artists discovered motivation in its pictures. Composers put its statements to melodies. Thinkers pulled from its wisdom. The book turned into more than writing. It turned into living custom. Middle Ages decorated manuscripts kept Baruch's statements with golden liquid and shining shades. Scribes decorated its sheets with detailed edges. They created small pictures displaying Baruch composing by lamp glow. These artistic selections showed how groups grasped the book's importance. The seeing attractiveness showed the writing's spiritual worth. Cathedral makers put Baruch's subjects into rock and colored glass. Rose glass portrayed scenes of displacement and coming back. Shaped doorways displayed figures crying and celebrating. The book's emotional path discovered form in building shape. Those worshipping entering these holy areas met Baruch's teaching before hearing its statements. The book's prayers came into Christian ceremony through many paths. Monastic groups put portions into their regular offices. Parish churches employed its words in seasons of turning back. The writing's beat matched the beat of worship. Its statements turned into vehicles for group prayer. The letter of Jeremiah discovered special liturgical existence. Its speaking against untrue deities helped preaching requirements. Clergy repeated its portions during times of moral trouble. The letter's definite teaching made it important for instructing aims. Its relevance appeared to go beyond its old setting. Renaissance artists found fresh possibilities in Baruch's pictures. Painters showed the prophet in times of divine breathing in. Sculptors shaped his shape into church fronts. The book's giving human form to wisdom drew special focus. Artists attempted to hold unclear ideas in solid shape. The Protestant Reformation built intricate connections with Baruch's liturgical past. While questioning the book's canonical condition, reformers occasionally kept its words in worship. The writing's spiritual worth survived theological discussions. Its statements kept nurturing faith even in groups that questioned its power. Catholic Counter-Reformation creation accepted Baruch with fresh enthusiasm. Baroque painters built dramatic scenes of prophetic seeing. Composers put the book's prayers to detailed musical arrangements. The writing turned into picture of Catholic dedication to wider biblical custom. The book's effect on theological reasoning proved more quiet but equally important. Middle Ages religious scholars discovered support for their grasp of divine compassion. The book's handling of displacement and coming back offered structure for talking about salvation history. Its focus on group admission shaped regretful practices. The wisdom song drew reasoning focus. Scholastic thinkers employed its words to talk about divine qualities. The book's matching of wisdom with divine rule supported Middle Ages bringing together of faith and thinking. Its poetic handling of unclear ideas shaped theological word choices. The book's understanding of displacement talked to groups living through forced moving. Irish monks running from Viking attacks discovered comfort in its statements. Jews pushed out from Spain heard their personal account in its sadness. The writing's emotional truth offered words for working through pain. The time of discovery carried fresh settings for grasping Baruch's teaching. Missionaries meeting foreign beliefs discovered the letter of Jeremiah relevant to their labor. The book's questioning of idol worship appeared to face current tests, its old wisdom fitting current circumstances. The Enlightenment carried fresh valuing for Baruch's written gains. Scholars spotted its poetic advancement. They studied its employment of biblical custom. The book received respect as illustration of old Jewish writing, even among readers who questioned its religious power. Romantic artists discovered motivation in Baruch's emotional strength. Poets rang its words of wanting and expectation. Painters showed its scenes of group sadness. The book's mixing of personal and group living attracted romantic feelings. The book's handling of group blame shaped current talks of social duty. Its focus on group admission offered words for facing historical wrongs. The writing's steady method to judging and compassion brought pattern for moral thinking. Current liturgical renewal movements found again Baruch's worship strength. The book's prayers discovered fresh existence in current gatherings. Its subjects of admission and expectation talked to current spiritual requirements. The writing showed surprisingly adaptable to various worship approaches. The book's effect on hymn writing needs special focus. Composers across the ages put its statements to melodies. The writing's beat and pictures worked well for musical reading. Many hymns follow their source to Baruch's prayers, even when this tie stays unspotted. The book's handling of wisdom shaped teaching, thinking. Its giving human form to divine information as reachable reality attracted teachers. The writing hinted that wisdom could be discovered instead of only studied. This view molded methods to religious teaching. Current creation keeps discovering motivation in Baruch's subjects. Current artists build installations, looking at displacement and coming back. Composers compose pieces rooted in the book's emotional path. The writing's relevance to current living keeps it breathing in creative awareness. The book's effect on political reasoning showed more indirect but still important. Its seeing of divine fairness shaped ideas of proper power. Its questioning of untrue worship offered words for testing bad authority. The writing's expectation for being made whole motivated movements for social shift. The digital time has built fresh possibilities for living through Baruch's past. Online displays show ages of creation motivated by the book. Digital collections keep musical arrangements of its writings. The book's effect turns more seeable as historical materials turn more reachable. The book's mind understandings keep shaping pastoral attention. Its handling of blame and pardoning offers structure for guiding. Its steadiness of personal and group worries talks to current healing methods. The writing's emotional truth brings pattern for working through hard livings. The book's past shows how old wisdom stays relevant across ages. Each age discovers fresh meanings in its statements. Each culture finds various parts of its teaching. This continuing action of reading keeps the writing breathing in human awareness. Why it still matters. In our time of quick messages and electronic racket, an old speaker talks across the ages. The Book of Baruch talks to something deep inside the human spirit. Its statements hold importance because they face livings that go beyond time and culture. Displacement, missing, expectation. These subjects stay as relevant now as they existed 25 ages past. Think about the current living of forced moving. Millions of individuals exist distant from their family homes. They hold inside themselves the hurt of being apart. They question if they fit anywhere. Baruch grasped this sensation. His statements provide voice to the wanting that refugees, immigrants, and spiritual hunters share across the ages. The book's handling of group duty rings in our tied-together globe. We exist with results of choices made by earlier ages. We battle with received troubles that appear too big for personal answers. Baruch's focus on group admission brings structure for facing shared tests. Its seeing of group renewal offers expectation for shared movement. The current globe encounters its personal trouble of wisdom. Details beat us down. Facts flood our awareness. Still information appears to grow while wisdom stays hard to find. Baruch's song to wisdom talks to this problem. It hints that genuine grasp arrives not from piling up details but from matching with greater reality. The book's mind understandings show remarkably current. Its handling of blame and pardoning looks ahead to current healing methods. Its steadiness of personal and group worries talks about mind health. Its truthful recognizing of human stumbling offers pattern for real self-thinking. The writing's spiritual teaching goes beyond religious edges. Its subjects of displacement and coming back talk to anyone who has lived through missing and getting back. Its focus on expectation in Black times brings comfort to individuals encountering personal trouble. Its seeing of final being made whole offers structure for grasping life's troubles. The book's written qualities keep motivating readers. Its emotional truth builds strong tie with current groups. Its poetic words offer word choices for showing intricate sensations. Its account arrangement brings sequence for grasping personal and group livings. The letter of Jeremiah stays surprisingly relevant to current worries. Its questioning of untrue worship fits current idol worships. Its study of how individuals build deities matching their image talks about worth and purpose. It summons for real faith tests readers to look at their personal spiritual promises. The book's handling of divine fairness faces lasting matters about pain and purpose. Why do worthy individuals live through difficulty? How do we keep expectation when situations appear without hope? Baruch's fighting with these matters offers company for current hunters encountering similar uncertainties. The writing's seeing of being made whole brings different choice to giving up. In a globe that frequently appears broken past fixing, Baruch hints that making fresh stays possible. Its expectation reaches past personal rescue to hold group mending. This view offers reason for laboring toward uplifting shift. The book's effect on ceremony and worship keeps molding religious groups. Its prayers offer words for showing shared dedication. Its subjects of admission and pardoning arrange religious seasons. Its seeing of divine compassion shapes theological grasp across customs. The writing's historical view brings important understandings for current readers. Its grasp of how groups work through pain offers structure for facing current tests. Its handling of cultural character talks about variety and fitting in. Its seeing of faithful existing in unfriendly settings motivates individuals encountering different shapes of harm. The book's teaching worth reaches past religious groups. Its written qualities make it important for examining old writing. Its historical understandings add to grasping old Judaism. Its theological subjects offer study example for looking into religious reasoning. Its mind observations bring material for looking into human character. The writing's unity strength needs spotting. While various groups keep various stands about its canonical condition, most spot its spiritual worth. Its subjects offer shared ground for cross-faith talking. Its wisdom goes beyond sectarian edges. The book's relevance to current social matters shows especially important. Its handling of financial fairness presents worries about imbalance. Its focus on looking after weak groups faces current helping challenges. Its seeing of made whole community offers expectation for social mending. The writing's environmental meanings, while quiet, need focus. Its grasp of making as divine present tests attitudes toward natural sources. Its seeing of made whole territory talks to present ecological worries. Its focus on wise looking after offers structure for environmental right actions. The book's method to political power stays relevant. Its questioning of untrue worship fits current shapes of authority. Its focus on divine fairness tests human frameworks of ruling. Its seeing of right leadership offers measure for judging political assertions. The writing's giving to grasping human character keeps showing important. Its truthful measuring of human direction towards fooling oneself talks to current mind understandings. Its steadiness of personal and group worries faces current strains between personal freedom and social duty. The book's past in creation and culture makes human civilization richer. Its effect on writing, melodies, and seeing creations keeps motivating creative form. Its subjects offer material for looking into basic human livings. Its pictures bring word choices for showing intricate feelings. The writing's teaching of expectation finally shows its continuing importance. In a globe indicated by force, unfairness, and pain, Baruch brings seeing of final being made whole. Its expectation stays practical about human character while keeping trust in divine staying true. This steady view offers base for purposeful living. The book's relevance to personal spiritual growing stays deep. Its path from giving up to expectation offers sequence for personal building. Its focus on truthful self-looking tests readers to encounter their personal boundaries. Its seeing of changing offers reason for uplifting shift. The writing's giving to grasping the character of faith shows especially important. Its handling of uncertainty and trusting talks to current spiritual battles. Its focus on group dimensions of faith tests personal-focused methods to belief. Its seeing of faithful existing offers pattern for real spiritual living. The Book of Baruch holds importance because it faces the basic human state. Its old statements talk to current spirits because they come from livings that go beyond time and culture. Its teaching of expectation in the middle of giving up offers base for purposeful living. Its seeing of final being made whole brings different choice to bitter feelings and giving up. The writing points us to the fact that human creatures are strong beings able to survive huge tests. Its account of displacement and coming back shows that missing doesn't have to be last. Its focus on group mending hints that broken connections can be made whole. Its seeing of divine staying true offers anchor for human expectation. The book's continuing importance rests in its power to change pain into purpose. Its truthful recognizing of human stumbling builds area for real building. Its seeing of divine compassion offers base for pardoning. Its expectation for being made whole brings reason for uplifting movement. In our tangled current globe, the Book of Baruch brings basic but deep wisdom. It points us to the fact that we aren't separate in our battles. It hints that our troubles help bigger aims. It offers expectation that our broken globe can be made whole. These old statements keep holding importance because they talk to the greatest requirements of the human spirit.